Well, now they're just coming out and saying it. Brian Stelter basically says that they're calling for reporters out there to cover Republicans way differently, which they already do, than people on the left. That's just par for the course for the mainstream media. And while you're out there, before I continue, go ahead and like, subscribe, share to all my videos that you watch. I'm also on BitChute and Odyssey. I'm going to be trying to do more specific content that YouTube doesn't like on Odyssey and BitChute and Rumble, if I get a chance to. I'm not getting much traction on Rumble, but again, I haven't really put anything on there. So I'm going to continue here. So, as I stated before, the mainstream media, they always cover people on the right way differently than people on the left, as you'll see continuing on in this article here. He goes on to say, I want to dive straight into your argument about both siderism is and why it's failing the public. Stelter said as Combs, whose column on the subject won praise from liberal journalists. Now, anything that garners praise from liberal journalists, it means it goes completely against anybody on the right side of the political spectrum, and it props up everybody who's on the left, including Antifa, BLM, the squad, anybody out there is trying to overthrow our government, essentially, and bring in some sort of, totalitarian leftism, whatever that entails, which could be a lot, hive mind collectivism, that's what they want. But, again, they just can't really do it. They have to convince a lot of people to say, just shut up, just listen to us, don't vote anymore, we're going to take control of you, and we're going to control everything. You just sit back and you just take what we give you. That's what they want. He goes on to say, is it that we're treating Democrats and Republicans equally and ignoring GOP radicalism? Is that the heart of the problem? No. Radicalism is on the left. It's not on the right. You could probably maybe perhaps call it reactionaryism. But for the most part, most of the violence, I'd say 90% of the violence, is on the left side of the political spectrum. Don't believe me? Look at last summer, during the Summer of Love. That is all you need to know. And look how the news media portrayed those BLM and Antifa activists. Even today, they prop them up as stalwarts of the left. They're fighting fascism, even though they're fighting fascism with more fascism. Imagine my shock, right? Because Brian Stelter's a piece of work. Combs said that was in sense correct. There is no question that journalists are recognizing radicalization of the Republican Party. Again, there's no radicalization. It's reactionaryism. It's reactionary to the radicalism on the left. Take that for what you want. I think what's changed a little bit is that since Trump left office, there is more of a sense that maybe we're back to normal. Back to normal? What? High inflation? Paying people to stay home? Going through your bank accounts for every $600 transaction? The government gets to know about it? What else can I go? Open borders? That's normal? Fuck you. Jesus Christ. Combs then declared this is not a new problem or dynamic, but insisted that she has personally been fair throughout her bullshit. I don't know nothing about her, but I know she's full of shit. She works for the LA Times and she's full of fucking shit. Flat out 100% across the board? No. She's full. Fuck you, bitch. And he goes, I think I'm a very fair reporter. That's her opinion. That's an opinion. She thinks she's fair. No, that is an opinion. And give both sides of the story. But what started to happen back in the mid-90s with the takeover of the House by Republicans, and in particular Newt Gingrich, was a new nasty, she said. I mean, this byword was be nasty and norm-busting obstructionist sort of government. Well, you couldn't really call it governance. That sort of was a precursor for Trump. No, see, Trump basically threw it back in your face and says, no, F you, I'm going to do this. And then you're like, how dare you, he's being mean to everybody. No, he was throwing your meanness right back in your fucking face, and you couldn't handle it. Usually Republicans, like George Bush Jr., he would just sort of like just bend over backwards and sort of just kiss the ass of whatever leftist would come around him. But when Trump got in, he basically said, sit and spin, And they freaked the fuck out, and they couldn't handle it. That's why he was impeached twice. It failed. Anyways, a former New York Times reporter, Combs, said basic understanding of both sides has evolved over the last 25 years. If you say, well, we reported something that's somewhat critical of Republicans, then you sort of have to say, well, both sides do it. Democrats are guilty as well, she said. And for years, that's sort of simplistically, I was able to do that, and then everyone else was able to do that. But by increasingly from 95 and on, no, it was not asymmetric, as the political scientists call it, and it was more descriptive of Republicans and Democrats. No. You see, you goddamn pieces of human leftist trash only attack people on the right side of the political spectrum that you diametrically opposed to, just as I am diametrically opposed to you. And yes, you don't want to admit that you have a bias. I, on the other hand, fully admit my biases. I have biases, obviously. But you goddamn pieces of leftist trash out there will attack Republicans and people on the right all day long, but you fail to ignore your fucking mess that you have on the left. And I admit that there are some Republicans out there that are scumbags. Mitt Romney, for one. I mean, that's not a very hard, one to pick out. And also, the turtle. He's terrible too. But again, you leftist assholes refuse to go after your side. And then you go, well, we go after our side. Okay, when? Oh, that's right. You can't. You don't have a body of work to back up that claim. Stelter didn't mention Combs' new book, Dissent, and said that it's about dissent of the GOP. Oh, it's not about dissent of the liberal wing of the Democratic Party, whose abject goal is out in the open, is to move this country towards a socialist country, a socialist government. But no. We will fail to acknowledge that part. What a piece of shit Stelter is. Look at this goddamn son of a bitch right here. Look at me. Fucking moron. CNN calls for press to ditch objectivity, portray GOP as a threat to the Constitution. CNN continued to escalate its dangerous rhetoric against Republicans on Sunday as so-called reliable sources. Stelter is a piece of shit. A fat, scumbag piece of shit. And I wish nothing but the worst to happen to him. He's a scumbag. He's a piece of shit, asshole, cocksucker, motherfucker. And just, all you have to do is look at him and like, he looks like a dickhead. He's a dickhead. Continuing on here, I'm going to wrap this up. It says, that was a lie because much of the GOP still wanted the government to work well within the limited enumerated powers as written in the Constitution. I think both sides do, but they have a funny way of showing it, especially on the left, where they're like, well, we like the Constitution, but only if it's a socialist Constitution. And the Constitution is an old, dusty document. We need to change it. But they can't. They don't want to change it the normal way in the Constitution. They just want to sort of create laws and change the Constitution by legislative fiat. They want nothing to do with it other than basically like a Fabian socialist, bend and contort the world as they see fit. That's what they want to do. But the problem is that they got people on the right who are well armed and don't want to go along with it. That's the leftist problem. But and that's not to mention the ongoing debate within the party. There's some wanted bigger government, but for what they thought was important. Combs concluded by admitting that this all stemmed from her fear of former President Trump, and Stelter agreed that it was an important factor. The left-wing Stelter has long been accused of abandoning fairness to attack conservative media, while often giving liberal media organizations a pass, has struggled to remain relevant in the Joe Biden era. His program has averaged fewer than 1 million viewers for 7 straight months, and his October 17th episode was the lowest rated reliable sources of the year among the key news demographic of age adults 25 to 54. Fox News reported early this year on the growing trend of journalists throwing away appearance of objectivity to applause of fellow liberal media figures. NBC anchor Lester Holt was also applauded by liberal media figures when he said the notion of fairness was overrated. Yeah, imagine that. a news anchor, Lester Holt, another piece of human trash, basically saying, fairness? You don't need fairness. Fairness? Fuck fairness. Fairness. I thought that was... I thought that was, if you're part of the news, you need to call out both sides. Oh no, fuck that. We're going to call out the right. And then prop up the left. Oh, okay. So that's all you need to know. When you go out there and see news, especially on the internet and your local 630 news from the alphabet news organizations, all you need to know is that they're not on your side, especially if you're on the right. They're gonna bend and contort any sort of news that out there and portray to anybody on the right side of the political spectrum as the enemy. That's what they do. I, on the other hand, will let you know out there, Laszlo here is biased. The left side of the political spectrum is not your friend, and they will fucking kill you if they could get away with it. They can't necessarily get away with it now, so they're going to demonize you if you challenge any sort of jib-jab narrative, any Fauci narrative, any vaccine narrative, any medical narrative out there. If you dare challenge, you're like, well, I have a different opinion. Susan Wojcicki, who works in league with the news organizations, will have you banned for medical disinformation. If you write a rap song, Bryson Gray, most likely he's the best choice for this analogy here, and you challenge any sort of narrative, Susan Woj will boot your ass off. Why? Because you challenged the narrative and you pissed off the cathedral, the ruling class, and you piss them off. That's what you need to do out there, folks. These two knuckleheads here, Combs and Stelter, all you need to know is they're all biased pieces of shit. They're scumbags. They're elitists. And they are not going to give you the news out there with any sort of objectivity. They already told you that objectivity is way overrated. It's not. It's what you're supposed to do. But at least, on the other hand, I'm objective. Biased, yes, but objective. At least I'm going to call out both sides when I see fit. But these people out here in the news media, they're not going to call it out. They're scumbags to the highest order. And you shouldn't listen to anything they say because it's contrary to whatever, essentially, what is right in this world.